Let's start with the title, Reimaging Management Theory and Practice. And today is the second webinar is why this is happening. The first one we saw what is happening. But let me introduce just the title. We have seen reimaging. Why reimaging? Is seeing with new eyes. So we see the reality here, and then we have our assumptions that filter that reality. And this is a realm of theory. So that's why it's reimaging. But assumptions. What are assumptions? We have defined assumptions as a proposition accepted without proof of or evidence as the basis for some further conclusion, or to assume something is to take it for granted as the basis of an argument or action. So in terms of research, it's not a variable, it's a fixed information that we have, in this case, in our mind. That's why it's rematching. Why theory, management theory and practice? Okay, theory and practice, you already know that. We have the realm of theory. Most of us are academics. And then we have the realm of practice because we transform reality with our theories and our actions. But what is management? Well, we see that it's both a phenomenon and a discipline. This is a definition, a known definition based on Aristotle, Barnard, and Rocha, the father of management. I define it as a phenomenon. It is the process of integrating people, organizations, and resources to achieve common goals guided by practical rationality. Practical rationality is a rationality that allow us to have a holistic view of reality. So part within a whole rather than means and end. This is instrumental rationality. And this practical rationality, we have seen that is familiar to substantive rationality of Max Weber. With this definition, so management foster collaboration and ensure that organizational efforts align with societal needs based on ethical criteria. This is the definition of management I'm taking here. Based on well, not only the happiness report, the 10th anniversary, they have a strong case based on the realistic view I'm taking these webinars is related to this, because when in the World Happiness Report, they say that we are looking for happiness or eudaimonia, and it is the activity of the soul according to virtue. They are taking a more Aristotelian approach, but now economists are doing this report, and Jeffrey Sachs is one of them from Columbia. They are taking an empirical case for that. It's not a philosophical as Aristotle did 2,400 years ago, but it's an empirical case. So this is my own assumptions here, is realistic approach to management theory and practice. We have seen this in the previous seminar. It's just to have a same level of knowledge with the new people here. So what we are seeing here, Reimaging Management Theory and Practice, is just focusing on what are our assumptions through which we see the reality. Then we build our theories and then transform reality, but also our own assumptions. So the idea here is like learning together through the slides I will show and your questions and answers, because last time were very, very important, just to make clear some points about what we think about assumptions and their impact on theory building and practice. So this is the whole map. Our roadmap is the first webinar was what is happening. We saw the motivation and challenges, and I left 2 questions for you. What is your phenomena of study teaching? And the second one, what are the main challenges you confront? So this was the input for today's seminar, that is why this is happening. So we will see the dominant paradigm, emerging realities, and the intellectual roots of the dominant paradigms. And this anticipates to you the 3 questions I will ask you at the end of the webinar. That is, what are the main theories you cite? What are their assumptions on people, organizations, and society? And what are their impact on practice? So I anticipate these questions. And then the next webinar, next Friday, will be what to do next. So we will summarize a richer paradigm on management theory and practice and future transformation. So what we can do to transform reality for good. And the 2 questions I will ask there is, what will be your contribution, and what will be your next step. While we are doing this, the important thing here is that you are reflecting on your own challenges and paradigms and transformation. So while we are going through the slides and our conversation, the important thing that you are reflecting on these points. So to have a richer lens about the reality, okay? Okay, so I see, Summer, you have a question here.
Yes, thank you so much, Hector. Um, I've been pulled to the thought of management paradigm shift, and looking at your question, I thought I need to ask this question. Um, so business and management discipline sits within social sciences and humanities, maybe sometimes within social sciences, but it was at that stage where it has outgrown as a distinct discipline, or maybe it tried to separate it out from the social sciences and stand as a business sciences, management sciences.
Mm-hmm.
Alongside this phenomenon, the other dilemma is that business management is rooted into capitalism, which
Mm-hmm.
has in own which has um, narrowed the mindset down of the business scientist, management scientist, and so the phenomena of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with that paradigm shift, and I think I am at that stage of my research career where I've started drifting from the business for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Management is still there. I cannot separate that out because that's
Okay.
what I've lived for last 10 years. The agenda of impact and social change. So my discipline, my subject area is innovation and change management.
Okay.
And with that change, I want to have that change in society. So I'm looking more towards with hope into social sciences where I can make impact, because with business I end up with capitalistic society with the
Mm-hmm.
greed of money and everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
With
Mm-hmm.
these dilemmas, I don't know where I'm heading to and how shall I
Right.
find that new way to look at, if you can help me,
Okay.
please.
So you are reflecting. That's important. You are reflecting. Okay. We will see. You mentioned two things. The third one is about what you are doing in the future. Great. But the two things, business and management as a separate science, we will see this in intellectual roots. So let's wait for that point. And then regarding that is business and management rooted in capitalism, we will see this now, just in 5 minutes. Okay? So before I will just anticipate the answer, but the important thing that we will focus on these 2 points. And then at the end, because you are in innovation and management, then you will see the intellectual roots and what are your roots. That's why I'm asking you, what are the main theories you cite? Think about this. What are their assumptions on people, organizations, and society? I assume that you have a different view from the dominant paradigm. And what are their impact on practice? So let's skip till we go through point 3 and 5 to have the answer, Summer. Thank you very much. Jonas, just you have a question.
Yeah, I'm sorry I was not there at the first meeting. So my question may be already answered there, but when you go back to your slides, I think the idea is to approximate reality somehow through our assumptions. And that the idea is that the field acts ethically. I have done a lot of research in recent years on serial ethical transgressors, that are people that basically break all the rules or a lot of rules in our field and keep doing that for years. So I wrote a paper, especially about 3 of them: Ute Hülsegger, Jessica Ippolito, Eva de Roux, and Johnny Fontaine. And they keep doing this, and basically there's nothing stopping them. When you report
Okay.
it, the field does not do anything. So my idea of my impression is that the idea that ethicality, or that the assumptions somehow lead to a correct literature. That used to be the case, but there's no correction. So even if people like publish things that are wrong, you cannot comment on it. There's no way to correct it. So that's, I think, it does not question your model. It just questions the reality of that model for management.
Yes. That's yeah. If you see the next slide here, it's all about what you are mentioning here. Because just connecting to the previous question, in the previous session webinar, what we saw is the following. It was Samantha Hoshal's dictum about let's write something that gives our kids a sense of the force for good. So the ethical question is already there. That's why in the definition of management, there is an ethical assumption there as well. It's not neutral. So we are transforming reality for good or for bad, but the important thing that we are aware of our assumptions.
Yeah, so when the assumption does not exist, so when people don't follow the assumption.
Well, let's see that, because we all always have assumptions, and now in the next slide we will see this with Milton Keynes dictum as well. Just to, because you were not there, and maybe why I think that half of you were not in the first webinar. Just let me summarize the first webinar in the one slide. The 3 webinars are all about this dictum, the force for good. Maybe we can help a new generation, new scholar, see that the field of management can be an exciting, worldwide, and honorable profession. When we see what is happening, this was the first webinar, at the societal level, business organization, business school, and people level, the idea was to think about our assumptions. Assumptions are there. The problem is we are not aware of the assumptions. So the starting point is to see what is happening. So we saw at the societal level, and this is for Kamar, it was a lot of work about reimaging capitalism, capitalism 2.0, etc., etc. It means that at the societal level, we are unsatisfied. Then at the business organizational level, I saw that map, that is the size of Apple, the 8th potent of the world, comparing market cap with GDP per capita. Of course, if there is an economy here, he will kill me. But anyway, it's just to see the power of business in the world. Then when we are going to the business school level, we are facing the same criticism. Well, these are 2 books, only 2 books, but just in 2004, Henry Minsberg wrote about manager, not MBAs, and then the 3 professors of Harvard rethinking the MBA. And then we saw at the people level, 83% of people in 2020, it was in the pandemic, were fear of losing the job. So there is something that is wrong here. And today we will see the why this is wrong. And for that, we are going to the assumptions, answering your question, because here, when I anticipate this webinar last time, it was why this is happening. I show this dictum, Milton Keynes. The ideas of economists and political philosophers, ideas, both, when they are right and when they are wrong, that's your point, are more powerful than is commonly understood. Indeed, practical men who believe themselves to be quite exempt from an intellectual influences are usually the slaves of some defunct economists. It means that we always have assumptions, and we as academics have a responsibility because we are like the lenses helping people and managers to see the reality. Not the whole reality, because we are not God, but our assumptions influence practice, and we will see this during the whole webinar. And then I invite you to keep thinking about your question about the ethical dilemma, because now we are going to the dominant paradigm, and when we see the dominant paradigm, there are some assumptions here. Let's go to the societal level. If you see, I don't know, in your country, but in my country and in Latin America in general, we are just waiting for the, I don't know, World Bank or IMF report about what are the projections of GDP per capita. So our dominant paradigm is economic and materialistic. When you measure how a country is going, just focus on GDP per capita, and then you have the ranking. But the problem is this is just economic growth, a continuous increase in the size of the economy. It's just a result. In next webinar, so I invited you to be part of the the closing seminar, we see the alternative paradigms at the societal level to have a richer vision of reality, not a complete, a richer. That's a key point, because none of us can say that we have the whole vision of reality. This is important. This is a cooperative work. That's why we say, okay, GDP per capita is part of reality, and it's the dominant paradigm. But how can we enrich this reality to have a wider view of our societal level paradigm? So when we are going to the societal level, so we are moving now this stair in the Y, the societal level, we see that the dominant paradigm is economic prosperity. Now we are going down to the other three levels of analysis: business organization, business schools, and people, to see what are the dominant paradigms. At the same time, I'm inviting you to reflect on the theories, the writing. You, Joanna, for example, wrote a paper. What are the paradigms of the theories you use in your paper? Because it's like when we are consuming something, you see the labels. What are you drinking or eating? In our case, the paradigms of the theories we use are like this level. And we need to make them explicit so people know what they are consuming when we are showing them something. Here, what I'm trying to do is just to open a black box and to reflect myself, and I invite you to do the same, on the paradigms at these three levels of analysis. So at the societal level, we have that the dominant one is economic prosperity. Let's go to the business organization, and here you can take the ethical dilemma, Jonas, you mentioned before. Here you have ideas in practice. So the ideas, this is a famous article, The Social Responsibility of Business to Increase Its Profits, Milton Friedman, Economic Nobel Prize. This article was in 1970. I'm sure that in your PhD studies, you already have written this article. But then these ideas go to practice, because practitioners, managers, don't have time to go to philosophy or to think about their assumptions. They are going to business schools and to learn the tools to transform the reality. So you have, for example, Bernard Madoff. He passes away some years ago, but at that time he mentioned that, so we determined that the best thing for us to do was basically to take the human being out of the equation. So then, well, we had this consequence of having this paradigm in practice. But going to the business roundtable, US business roundtable, this is the most powerful roundtable in the world. 181 companies, Facebook, Google, Amazon, all the companies, the important companies are there. And see what was the dictum there since 1978. Each version of the document have endorsed the principles of shareholder primacy. This is what Samar said before. So we are within a version of capitalism that prioritizes the shareholder primacy. So based on that, then all the theories are built on this paradigm, the main theory, not all the theory, but the main theories. So that corporation exists principally to serve shareholders, not all the stakeholders. So this is at the business organizational level. And you can see this in practice. See, for example, this was in 2023. Now Facebook is Meta. So Mark Zuckerberg wrote that. Meta is building the future of human connection. And today I want to share some updates on the year of efficiency. See, a year of efficiency that will help us to do that. The goals of the work are better technology company and to improve our financial performance. Just two goals. It's a narrow goal. So it's connected to what we have seen before. And this was Facebook, now it's Meta, in 2021. It was the 22nd richer country in the world, ahead of the Netherlands, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, etc., etc. So you can see the relationship between the paradigms at the societal level and then go to the business organization level. But see now the impact on society. For example, compare Facebook or Walt Disney. You see, number of employees. See, the market cap, the double. So, Samara, if you leave the capitalism system as it is today, in this way, it concentrates the wealth in few people and put aside a lot of people without work. That's the problem we have seen before, and now we are going to the paradigm that are driving this problem. Let's go to the business organization, but at the process level. Read Michael Porter's dictum here. The essence of strategy formulation is coping with competition. And every company and every country, see that, every country, sorry about that, every country must try to understand and master competition, given his power to unleash innovation and drive enhanced rate of progress. So you can see the alignment between the social paradigm and the business organizational paradigm. So progress in terms of what? In terms of economic terms, economic prosperity. When you go to the business organization level, so you see the purpose is profit maximization, endorsed by the US Business Roundtable, and the main process is competition as winning. But the important thing in economists is that they have a clear view. They are very clear, explicit, and then you can see this in practice. So you can see these paradigms aligned at the societal level and the business organizational level. And now let's see what is happening at the business school level, where we are. What do we need to have in mind? So this was a Sumantra's article when, well, he passes away in 2004. But in 2005, the Academy of Management, Learning and Education published a post-common article. He was writing this article when he died. See the title, Bad Management Theories Are Destroying Good Management Practices. That's a very strong dictum there. But we have seen before that there's a connection between the societal and the business organizational level. Now let's see the connection to our theories. And here you have the case of strategy. Then we will see next webinar how business policy was transformed into strategy. Business policy, including the human being at the center and ethical criteria, was transformed in a tool that is just strategy. So, and this is at Harvard, so they have a strong influence here. So it's based on economic theory and strategy concepts. So now it's strategy. It's not business policy. There are no business school in the world that is called business policy. And strategy and entrepreneurship are different words. At the business school, there is a paper we wrote together with Maria Jose Murcia and Julian Birkishoff from LBS. It's called A Trip Back from Sparta to Athens. What we have seen there, going through history, is that nowadays, at the business school level, we are following a Spartan model. This is Sparta. These are the key assumptions of the Spartan model, and then let's see how they apply to the business school level. So the institutional purpose was conquer and expand. This is similar to what we have seen before in business organization. Mission, militarization of both private and collective life. Ideal expected profile, enhanced maneuverability of soldiers, and the main stakeholder nation. Okay? They go to the business school level. How can we apply this to management education? What is the mission? Well, maximize what? Well, for example, my school is a revenue model. We don't have the endowment of Harvard or no other business school. We need to sell to live, because if not, we are not in the business school. So this is a revenue model. But at the same time, maximize what? Rankings. In 1988, Business Week invent the rankings. And now all of us are in this career of getting at the top of the ranking, etc., etc., etc. So our mission is to maximize. What is the curriculum? Well, especially scientific model, because ethics and sustainability are like separate courses or disciplines. They are not embedded in the economic and financial courses. This is a great challenge. What are the main methods? I don't know in your PhDs, but when I did my PhD at London Business School and in the top of the school, in general, you have the abstract financial and economic analysis, statistical multiple regressions, and laboratory psychology. Those are the key methods there. And then what is the faculty profile? Well, PhD specialist, discipline and method oriented. For example, my PhD was in business, but then you have in these different disciplines. I am a PhD, philosopher and doctor, as many of you, but I didn't have philosophy. So I need to take philosophy at London School of Economics, where Kuhn, Lakatos, all these great philosophers, modern time, were teaching. So the important thing that we are now in this, the dominant paradigm. I know there are many changes, and here in New Scholars, if you see the video, you will see topics that are not economic topics, are more just to have a wider paradigm. But nowadays, the dominant paradigm is this one. That's why if we are going to the business school level, we are having the Spartan model. So you can see an alignment of the three levels of analysis so far. Now we are going to people, but it's at the societal level. We have economic prosperity, business level, profit maximization and competition as winning. And then at the business school, we have the Spartan model. Let's go to people. This is an article we were writing with Sumanta when he died. And it's called Beyond Self-Interest. And to see, are we really interested? So we create a matrix. So here you have the object of motivation. This is the subject. So we are just considering yourself, your own interest, and pleasure or material good. This is narrow self-interest. This is the typical economic man. Here you have Adam Smith. But then, when you see that other people are important, but in this case, others are important as means, only as means, not as ends in themselves. So what you have here is enlightened self-interest. Here you can have moral sentiments as well. So enlightened self-interest is there as well. So it's the theory of moral sentiments of Adam Smith as well. And this is called resourceful, evaluative, maximizer mind. So what motivates us? Again, if we align all these three, is self-interest. So everything is connected. The three levels of analysis. So the important thing now is what are the emerging realities that are challenging this dominant paradigm. So we have had two Academy of Management symposium with all these people, which you have here, Jeffrey Sachs. We will see some of them and what they are doing. Because what they are doing in theory and practice are challenging this dominant paradigm. So the invitation is to see what they are doing and then to see if we can have a different paradigm. So these were the symposiums, in this case, Chaco and Gilbert, the co-founder of B Corps, Razi Sodia, co-founder of Conscious Capitalism Movement. Gary George at that time was the dean of the Singapore University, and now he's in George Washington University. And we were putting all, and Charles Walkie was a blueprint for better service. And together with Roy Sadaby and Michael Pearson and Elaine, we were putting together this symposium. Then next year, in 2022, we did the same. But in that case, we invite Jeffrey Sachs and then Henry Minsberg as well, and Phil Pham, just to have their view on different things. First, why you do what you do, that was very important. And then asking the question about what is the purpose of society, business organization, and business school. The three questions, just to see from reality and what they are doing, what are their own assumptions. So here you have Jeffrey Sachs, is the Sustainable Development Report, but also he's co-author of the World Happiness Report. And here you have the interview we have with him. So you can see them in the New Scholar. I share the link. Then you have Jacob and Gilbert, people using business as a force for good. It's a different paradigm, as you see. So in this case, You can see at the social level, through your business, you can create this happy people. And then at the environmental level, also you can do this from desert to have grass in the land. Here, when he was here at a year in 2014. This is just working with Blueprint for Better Business, Rasi Sodia, as I mentioned. So these are the emerging realities that are challenging the dominant paradigm, as we have seen, because nothing to do with economic prosperity. We are putting also the social and environmental side. It's nothing to do with maximizing shareholder value, because we are putting there at the center of business the social and environmental considerations. And it means that it's not about self-interest. We are following a different approach, more excellence-based approach. And at the business school level, we need to teach different disciplines, not just economic ones. So let's see the intellectual root of the dominant paradigm, and then we'll start with the QA. Again, definition assumption, we have seen this before. Here we have an example of an assumption. The ultimate goal of a positive science is the development of a theory that yields valid and meaningful predictions about phenomena not yet observed. Truly important hypotheses will be found to have assumptions that are widely inaccurate descriptive representation of reality. And in general, the more significant the theory, the more unrealistic the assumption. This is dedicated to you, Jonas. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter our assumption. It's not realistic. It doesn't matter. So why doing this connection? We need to build theories to transform reality with independence of that reality. So these are assumptions at the higher level of analysis. Is about theory building. And this is an assumption about a specific theory, the evolution of cooperation, Axelrod. The cooperation theory is presented in this book based on an investigation of individuals who pursue their own self-interest. The important thing of economists, I repeat again, is that they make their assumptions explicit. This is very important. That's why, Jonas, it's important that the assumptions are there and to be honest enough to make them explicit so people can have a public scrutiny of my assumption. I did this in the first webinar. I did it here. My assumptions are a realistic assumption based on Aristotle. So I don't know the whole reality, but we can have a richer understanding of reality working together, doing this type of seminar, for example, webinars, okay? I see there is a hand raised. I will just wait for a minute just to finish the presentation, and then in the QA, some of you will have the first hand, okay? So here what I'm doing is intellectual root, is assumptions on theory development. This is very important because it's about theory building. When you are sending a paper to a journal, this is the gatekeeper. If you don't have this assumption, if you are an economic journal, then you will not get published. And then you have an assumption about a specific theory. So the important thing here is just to have a bigger picture. Here you have theory building, the basic components, and the contextual component. This is based on Whedon. What constitutes a theoretical contribution? 1989 paper. For sure, you have read it in your PhD studies. So the basic components are concepts, what, how, relationships, why, assumptions. This is our key point here. And so what, prescriptions. And then you have contextual components that are when, time, and where space. And now let's see the goals of theory. Description, explanation, and prescription. We have seen before that, according to Milton Friedman, this is the main goal of theory building. Prescription, it doesn't matter what are your assumptions. But in general, when you go to philosophy of science, let's see this in Rothbard, for example, the success of a theory is measured in part, but his capacity to explain known events. So it's more related to description and explanation. Okay? So in this case, we need to go to the philosophers, not to the economists, to understand what are the main components of theory building. And here I'm answering partially some of your question before. We depend on philosophy We cannot say that we are an independent business field. Well, of course, we have a focus, but the important thing that all the science are connected. We cannot just cut our relationship with our intellectual root, our philosophy. This is a graph, an updated graph of Sumanta Ghoshal. In this article I show you in 2005. Then I wrote a paper in 2008. Here is very important. Assumptions starting from us. I asked you, what are the assumptions of human beings regarding the theories you are using? So in this case, you can have assumption just we have vegetative and sensible life, no intellectual life, or we can have a richer paradigm that we have an intellectual life. For example, you cannot see my assumptions while I'm talking to you. This is part of our intellect. You cannot measure my assumptions. But sometimes, to make it easier, some people assume that in theory building and management, we need to take the route of the natural sciences. And this is for physics and biology. So in this case, they are asking for causal explanations and maybe functional explanations. But what about intentional explanations? What are your motivations? In this case, you need to go to humanities. So it is important to understand what are our assumptions in theory building. Let's put it in an example here. Let's take, for example, transaction cost economics, a very powerful theory in general we use. Here you have the assumptions of human nature. People are opportunistic, so this is not a variable, it's just a datum. It's a fixed variable. It does not vary. So we have opportunistic behavior. The focus of transaction cost economics is how can we reduce the scope of discretion? This is the focus, not on our motivations. So in this case, we need to focus on asset specificity, the higher, the more scope of discretion, and hierarchy. The higher, more power, less scope of discretion. So this is a way we can reduce opportunism with hierarchy and asset specificity. This is the way we build theories. That's why it's very important to have our assumptions explicit. Let's assume that opportunism is a variable. Not all of us are opportunists. We have the temptation to be opportunist, but it's a variable, not a fixed information there, an exhaustion of variable. So here, assumption of human nature, motivation can include more than opportunism. So our focus is not just on asset specificity and hierarchy, but also on what motivates us. You change the assumption, you make a variable, and then your theory is more powerful than just assuming that we are all opportunists. I will skip that. So let's go to the teaching part, the bridge between theory and practice, okay? 1910 to 1980, business policy was the field of study. Now it's strategic management. Ethic was put aside. The human being was put aside, Jonas. That's the key point. So we are teaching people more economy around other things. These are the assumptions in practice. So in 2000 and 2000, you are seeing that there are some emergent realities there that are challenging the dominant assumptions. So the millennial goals, this in 2009, the UN 17 goals, then the US Business Roundtable will see next webinar that they are changing from shareholder to stakeholder value. And then the World Economic Forum, the Great Reset Initiative. Here is what they are doing now in 2010. Here you have seen that shareholder primacy in the corporation exists principally to serve shareholders. In 2019, now they say that companies are for the benefit of all stakeholders. Some people say, well, this is opportunistic behavior because corporations are second, starting from below in US after the Congress. But let's see, there are 5 years in 2019. See reality if this change in assumptions are real or not. So the questions to you, and I'm finishing here, is what are the main theories you cite? Second, what are their assumptions on people, organizations, and society? And third, what are their impact on practice? So with this, I finished this second webinar, but before the QA, please don't miss out the next one, what to do next. So it's the richer paradigm to discuss this thing. So I will go back to the 3 questions, and now I open to your questions. So Sama, you have a question, I think. You were with your hand raised.
Yeah, so we want to transform reality. This sounds an assumption to me. Everything is sounding assumption to me now. Why do we want to transform the reality? And another assumption we are having is that with that transformation will move to the good. It may not be.
Great point, because it's an assumption. That's why I make my assumptions explicit. It's important to distinguish 2 things here. First, let me go back to the first one. So I will use a slide just to have a support for my answer here. Hold on a second. Here we are. Okay. Here we are. This is the important thing. One thing is, if we are transforming reality, with the independence that we want to do it or not, we are transforming reality with our actions. Okay? That's a fact. We are not neutral. The way we behave, our theories are influencing other people and reality as well. Then, of course, you can have an intention to say, okay, we are within the dominant paradigm. As an academic, I saw that it's a very restrictive paradigm. So I would like to have a richer paradigm using innovation theory, in your case, or Shona's articles as well, and to see, well, I will try to at least to have a richer view of reality. So please distinguish the 2 things. As human beings, because we are free, we are changing reality, for good or for bad, but we are changing reality. Then your question is about your intention. And in this case, we are free to see if we want to do this way or the other way. But our assumptions are not neutral. This is an important thing. The way we see reality change our theories, they do, and then transform not only reality, but also our assumptions. Oh, no, Sama, I answer your question.
How would you define assumption?
An assumption is, I define it here, just I go to a proposition accepted without proof of evidence as the basis for some further conclusion. Is to take it for granted. Like, for example, that we are talking here. I'm taking for granted. It's a fact. I don't need to demonstrate that I'm talking to you, Samar. Okay? Right?
We are assuming something more into it by saying without a proof or evidence. Then we need to look into what evidence, what do we actually mean by? There would
Yeah,
be
well,
assumptions in the evidence.
yeah, but the important thing that when we saw the theory building picture about seeing the reality and then having prescriptions, we always have assumptions, okay? And then we need to, but it's more philosophical. I would like to give the hand to Jonas, but the important thing that you understand that all of us have assumptions. That's a very important to, then that we need to make them explicit. In my case, I have a realistic approach that there is a reality out there and we are part of reality. And that we together can have a progressive knowledge of reality, helping each other, as in this discussion, okay? If someone say, okay, this is virtual reality, okay, but I have here water, so I put water here, I can feel it. You cannot feel it, but I feel it. And then I can invite you to go to your kitchen and do the same, and you will feel it. So we will not discuss that because it's something that is there, okay? But the problem is when we are going to the higher level, the intellectual assumptions, That's why we are academics. We need to have a better lens to see that. Okay. Okay, I keep you reflecting on this, and let's go to Jonah.
Yeah, my concern is a bit. I think even in the paradigm that it's all about like maximizing profit or being selfish, I think the fundamental issue is that business schools still sell truth in a way. So when the product is deficient because our papers are not well quality controlled, then I think the whole model, even from the shareholder perspective, does not really work. So in that sense, I'm always curious about the fact why we do not care so much about how papers, about truth in papers, about people not really discussing when something is not done well and so on. So what business schools increasingly do is they put out more and more publications, but nobody is looking for the quality of those publications. And I wonder whether that does not challenge the whole, all of these models, shareholder, stakeholder, does not matter which one.
Okay, you're right. And this is the paradigm we have seen here, the Athenian model. So in our mission, we are replicating what corporations are doing, is maximizing here, okay? And you're right, this is the dominant, but next webinar, we will see the emergent and richer vision of a business school, for example. Yesterday, I read a paper, Croissant, on Academy of Management Learning and Education, 2024. It was about character development, not just talent in people, based on virtue. So nowadays, there are some papers that are published with this realist paradigm. It doesn't mean that people are not interested. We are not searching for the material things, but we are beyond that. These are the basics, are not the goal, the maximum. So, Jonah, I think that you are right, it's the dominant paradigm, but then we will see that there's an emerging paradigm, and now you can publish on these topics without having the risk of not being put aside. With Ibrat in the previous webinar, he asked about a young scholar doing this. You cannot do it alone. You need to do it with senior professors together, because you are risking your profession. Because if you don't get published, nowadays we will not have a promotion in the school. So the important thing is, of course, it's just to have a richer vision of reality, but then to be very prudent and practical in terms of going that way. Because if not, you have a richer vision, but then when you write a paper, you need to narrow your vision, because if not, you are not get published. The good news is nowadays there's many doors open to do that, but if you are a young scholar, it's very difficult to do it alone. You need to work together with senior scholars. I don't know if you see what I see. You are mute, so John, I know, but anyway.
Yeah, I don't know whether that's the case, that senior scholars solve this problem. Yeah, my experience is more that they don't, and however you define senior, I think
those who have tenure, they already have tenure.
Yeah, I had tenure too, so it does not change things much, to be honest.
Well, there are some senior scholars that are thinking the way you think, with a richer paradigm. That's why I mentioned working with the senior scholar that see what you see.
Yeah,
that's
maybe.
it. Not the dominant, because if not,
yeah,
we will not.
Okay, that I do get.
Well,
Of course, it's always a question: is there a movement or not? Yeah.
Yes. In the paper in 2005, Sumantra Rocha, in the last part, in the institutional framework, he mentioned explicitly your point, that we need to change the institutional framework in business school, because if we are still pushing people to publish in 8 journals, we'll never change these paradigms, because we are within the same paradigm. Okay, well, I don't know if there are, Ira, do you have any questions in the chat, or maybe some people would like to ask something? We have, I think, 5 minutes left.
I just want to invite if anyone wants to ask any other questions. Fangji?
Thank you.
Hi,
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. You just mentioned the definition of assumptions. I just wonder, what do you mean by reality here? Like,
Sorry, what I mean by what?
what's a reality? Your definition of reality?
Ah, that's right.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the first. Have you been in the first webinar?
Yeah. But it just got
Okay.
me to think. I wasn't really
Okay. Well,
clear.
I'm going to the slide. It was in the first webinar. I haven't repeated here because if not, it will be a copy paste of the first one. But that's it. The realistic paradigm means that there is a
No,
reality out there.
sorry. Sorry, I mean, what do you mean by reality? Not
Yeah,
the
reality.
paradigm that you.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
understand. Yeah,
the reality. Yeah,
Okay.
the reality, right? Yeah.
Yes, the reality is the objective things we see outside, but at the same time, we are part of reality because we can see. Now I'm seeing through the screen, talking to you, for example. So the reality is the objective things. It's not a positive view. It's a realistic view that this is what is reality. What we see out there, but not only with our eyes, but with our intelligence. So in that case, the connection between your intelligence and reality is the truth. For example, the truth that we are talking now with you. Okay? I have a conscience of myself, a tree. I have a tree behind me. Cannot think about this. It's part of the reality, but it's a part of the biological reality. We have a spiritual reality that transcends that. We cannot touch it. It's not sensible, but it's part of that. It's something that exists. It's related to the being. So that's reality. Everything that exists is reality, with independence that we can see it or not. It's a philosophical answer. It's related to the being, okay? It's not with the knowing the reality, not with the doing. It's the being. If you have a being, you are part of reality. You exist.
Okay, thank you. That's clear.
Okay, thank you. Martin.
Hi, Hector. Sorry, I cannot activate my camera. I'm on a transit, but I was following up on the reflection regarding the scholars that are bringing up new paradigms, new lines of intellectual roots. Besides Sumatra Ghoshal, has his legacy continued today? Who is following up on that? Because maybe the sense is that there is this trend, and maybe following those scholars, senior professors you mentioned, is one avenue to understand further the impact of these new theories that are emerging. What is your news regarding that?
Okay. Well, there is a Sumatra Ghoshal conference at LBS every year since 2005, but it doesn't mean that this is the legacy of Sumatra Ghoshal. The important thing here is, and he mentioned this before, in general, we scholars work together, and our theory, nobody knows the impact they have. The important thing here is that you are having a richer vision of reality, and nowadays I see more papers based on virtue ethics, for example. 10 years ago, you have the two main ethical approach was the consequentialist and the Kantian ethical approach. Nowadays, most papers are using Aristotelian ethics, realistic ethics. So this means that we are having a richer vision of reality. And this was one part of the Sumatra Ghoshal legacy, if you like, to question your assumptions, to have a richer vision of reality, because our assumptions are not neutral. He was talking about a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if we are thinking that all of us are self-interest, then you arrange your management tools and theories according to this assumption, then people will behave that way. So if you have a more realistic view of human beings and reality, then you will design the processes and you write papers based on a richer vision of reality. In that case, you are realizing the good potential of people. So I think there is a legacy, but not this Sumatra social legacy. It's the legacy of the people that are trying to do the same, to have a richer vision of reality, that they are not narrowing their papers because then they cannot get published. They risk their career writing about what they really think and opening the black box to enrich their own theories. So I don't think it's Sumantra's legacy, but it's the legacy of many people working on that side. Another thing is EFMD, for example, in 2023, it was an edited book of Howard Thomas, Orwell, and Goods regarding the mission and purpose of business school. Have a look at that. And you can see there a legacy. They are citing Sumantra's paper, Pfeffer paper, many people who were working on that. And now I think that we are reaching that point, and we will see this in the next webinar, how different papers showing a richer vision of paradigm, of reality, and then compared to the dominant paradigm. I don't know, Martin, if I asked your question.
Yes, thank you very much. I think you broadened the, the background. I think it's very clear. Thank you, Hector.
Thank you, Martin.